Let's have a quick look at the SOAR connector. So just to cover off on what the SOAR connector is, it's an engine designed to do one-to-many distribution of observables or indicators of compromise to SOPHOS XG Firewalls. So this is, mass distribution of domains, FQDNs, and IP addresses. So let's have a look at how that works. So you can go across to my GitHub, github.com. /0xBennyV, and you can find the SOAR connector there. We can go across to a terminal. I recommend doing this on a Debian or Ubuntu based system, like I'm going to do today. And if you are, and it's a fresh system, to get started, firstly, there is a prerequisite of using Docker and Docker Compose, and you can simply install that by saying sudo apt install docker and Docker Compose. That'll go through, install it, and if you don't already have it installed, and then you're ready to go. So from here, you get the URL as I did from the Git repository. You say git clone and put in the URL. We'll go into that directory. You can see here that there's a Docker Compose file, which is exactly what you need. So we'll say Docker Compose up. And that will then build a volume for Postgres SQL. It will also download a Postgres image, a Redis image, as well as build the XG SOAR worker, which is listening to the Redis server and is going to do all the processing. And that's the worker is what actually talks out to all of the firewalls. And then we've got the SOAR engine, which is the API gateway or the front end, the web front end. So now that we've got that up and running, let's take a look at it. So we'll browse to localhost, and you can see that it wants to do an initial user setup. So let's do that. Let's then log into the engine, and you can see that we've got a quick dashboard to show you firewalls online, those that are initialized, those that need review that, so those that are unhealthy, and of course a total of IOCs or observables that have been blocked. We then have our task history as well. If we go under management, you can see we can generate API tokens, firewalls, manage our blacklists and our FQDN lists. But we've also got our API docs here as well, which gives you a nice Swagger interface to actually understand the different endpoints that are available to the end user. So let's get started. We'll begin by adding a firewall. So let's put in a firewall called SOPHOS, so SOPHOS Firewall OS 01, API user, and we'll put in a super secure password. We'll then put in the IP address. For me, I've just got these running on VirtualBox at the moment on just host-only adapters. And I'm going to choose to initialize now. Now, if I don't select initialize now, that creates a job queue for the firewall worker. So that will then set up a job that will run within 10 minutes and initialize all uninitialized firewalls. And the reason why that happens if you don't do an initial, if you don't do that initialization, it's just to reduce overhead. So by waiting 10 minutes, it gives you the chance to submit a heap via an API, say via a script, and then it will initialize all of them. Or you can manually add them via the web interface, and then every 10 minutes it will go out there and it will update and commission every firewall. But in this case, I'm going to say initialize now for the sake of doing a demo. Now, once you add the firewall, you can see that we've got the option to edit it. We can choose to reinitialize it. So if for whatever reason any host objects are missing, or an appliance dies or gets replaced or gets upgraded with a bigger appliance, you can choose to just reinitialize it because all the credentials and everything else is the same. You can choose to check the health here. There is a decommission option and a delete option. Now, the reason why we've got these two different options is to, of course, remove all the configs. So you might not want that device managed by this engine anymore, and you will also want to remove all the config that's been put on there, and that's what decommission does. Otherwise, you can delete it. Now, again, decommissioning also runs a background job, and it takes about 10 minutes for it to run. At a later date, I do hope that these timers and the scheduling can actually become configurable. So watch this space. Now, if we go across to the dashboard, you can see that the based object config has been pushed out, as well as the host object initialization as well. So if we go across to that firewall, you can see that now we've got our SOAR blacklist. Its action is to drop. We're logging that traffic, and it's saying any of our source zones going out to any of these destinations do block. If we go across to hosts and services on the firewall, you can see that we've got a host group and we've got an FQDN group as well. But of course, we've added no additional objects other than default. So let's do that now. We can go across to IP blacklist. Let's choose some IP addresses to add in there. And you can see that they're in a non-distributed status. If we go across to the dashboard, you can see there is an IP distribution job ready to go. We can go across to FQDN and do the same thing. Let's do test1.example.com. Fantastic. So we've now got 2 FQDNs, and we've got 2 IPs, and of course there's a job ready to go to execute in about 5 minutes to push this out to every device. However, if we go across and we add a new firewall, so let's do SOPHOS 2 with the same credentials. And choose to initialize that now. You can see that it's currently not initialized. It's kind of a contradiction there because it's on the way of being initialized. And a job will start any moment to verify that device. So you can see the base config initialization is there now. And any second we'll see that SOPHOS 2 host object initialization will be completed. Now, if we go back to firewalls quickly, we can do things like check health, which will then run another job, which will actually say, okay, well, are the credentials that I've provided valid? So you can also understand whether the SOAR connector is able to talk out to devices. So if we go across now, you can see that the job statuses are completed. If we refresh our rules and policies, the SOAR blacklist is there. We go across to hosts and services, and you can now see that we've added those IP addresses, and they've been pre-appended with SOAR. This is so you can easily identify and search. So if we go across to say FQDN host, there's 15 pages of objects. So now if you want to search for SOAR, you can see that test1.example.com and test2.example.com has of course been added to the blacklist, and we can see that we've got our SOAR FQDN blacklist host group with those hosts there. So from here, this appliance is now blocking anything that we put into our SOAR connector. But the real power behind this engine is of course not this web interface. It's being able to use a restful interface for mass distribution. So if you're using tools like the Hive and Cortex, so any security incident response platform or orchestration platform, you would expect a RESTful API to communicate out to your devices, whether it's endpoint management, firewall, or something else in your network. So what we're going to do is create a new token and then switch across to Postman. And from there, we can add our bearer token for authentication. And from there, we can now start seeing communication to the SOAR connector. So I've just quickly gone to the base URL, API/stats, and of course it's pulled up the same information from that of the dashboard. But from here, we're able to choose to add a new firewall. We can also initialize a firewall as well by changing that in it to 1. And there's verification there as well. So if you wanted to do a bulk upload of appliances into this, I would say run a loop over a CSV file and use a RESTful interface for that. That's not what the web interface is designed for. In this case, we'll say send, and you can see that the firewall's successfully added. Of course, if I try and send that again, it'll tell me that the name's already in use. If I update the name, it should tell me that the IP address is already in use. If you want to pull a report on all of your firewalls, you can of course do that. You can see here that SOPHOS 1 and 2 are both healthy and initialized. Of course, SOPHOS 3 that we just added is uninitialized, and its health is set to 2, which means that it hasn't passed its health check, so it's deemed unhealthy. Of course, part of the initialization process is to verify the health, and that should get cleaned up shortly. You can also choose to delete firewalls from this interface if you want, but where the real power comes into it is being able to add add observables or indicators of compromise to the firewalls or to the connector via the RESTful interface. So what I'm going to do now is go across to my blacklist add function, of course add in an IP address. Let's do 3, and of course send that across, and you can see that we've got our success message. Response 200 has come back, so we know it's okay. Of course you can't add that again because it's already blacklisted. And we can do the same thing with example.com. If we send that through, we can see that it's now been blacklisted, and of course we can't add it again. At any stage you can run a report to say show me everything that I have blacklisted, so it's quite easy to script and get everything out of the database. And of course you can even run a check to say I want to see if this domain has been blacklisted or not. So you can see not found or found. Now, if you're impatient, or if you're writing a script and you say, I don't want to wait for those timers, I want to do immediate distribution, we've also added in the ability to do mass distribution. So you can say, I want to distribute IPs right now to every single device, or I want to distribute every FQDN now or domain, as well as just initializing every single firewall. So if you were to say write a PowerShell or Python script to interact with this API to do a bulk import of all your indicators of compromise and all of your firewalls, you can then run an initialization at the end to say push it out now. I don't want to wait for that 10-minute timer. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea of the capabilities of this engine. It is designed to do one-to-many and, of course, provide that RESTful interface. Now that we've added a few more via the REST engine, you can, of course, see that we've got a task list set in there. So hopefully that gives you a good overview. Of course, come over to the GitHub page, github.com/0xBennyV. Have a look at the SOAR connector, download it, try it. If you find any problems, let me know. Of course, log an issue, and appreciate some feedback. Thank you.